So I've been watching videos posted of fireworks fails, from 3 days ago. And, here we are, like hundreds of years into America existing and people blowing shit up all the time. And, the random mortar or cluster of Roman candles or just one of those giant bombs just blows up next to someone's fucking pile of crap. And it always amazes me that this is like people don't read the warning labels. There are literally warning labels all over every firework I've ever seen in my life.
Well, and then you have the people who are faking firework fails for clout. Like, I don't know if you saw Kai Cenat. He made it seem like they set his house on fire, but it was a fucking studio set.
Yeah. That's like, even more messed up.
It is. And that's where I'm like, man, the information age that kids have to grow up in is really crazy because you don't know I think they're well prepared for government propaganda, but it's because they're constantly inundated with other types of propaganda that's made to seem as if it's real, to the point that they they probably don't trust anything. And I think that's where a lot of the seeming disenchantment may come from. It's like you can't trust anything as a kid. They have the, I don't even want to say the best, the visual effects and CGI that they are inundated with constantly is so much better than the blockbuster movies that we saw as kids, that I don't blame them for seeing shit and not realizing that it's fake half the time, because somebody put so much effort into shading and lighting
Oh
and
man.
went so deep into making the illusion that it's like, yeah, of course, anybody who's like 12 years old or 13-year old is going to get tricked by it, because they're not trained in media, let alone having been exposed to enough different media to know when something is heavily edited.
I mean, not to mention that all of the tricks that could be applied to make video games look more realistic can be applied to video, which is a static file, and make it look incredible. Like all of the things, all of the technology that's available now that seems like it's just magic. We've been on this track for like the last 20 years where it's just been getting better and better and better. Visual effects, computer generated imaging, everything. It's so incredibly realistic at this point. It's like beyond uncanny valley. It's photorealism, hyperrealism. And you have to know how to look for the noise in the image that doesn't look right. That doesn't even resolve anymore all the time. It's like only when it's a minimally edited video do you see that kind of thing, that kind of artifacting. And then sometimes it's like an aesthetic that's being applied, and it's intentional.
Yeah, that's where I've noticed a lot of low quality videos where it looks like they're trying to make something to go viral will have a tell,
Yeah,
like um the fact that it's being recorded in the first place and it's not like a CCTV recording. And so I I think it's not even that, I don't think all adults are better at it, but the ones who pay attention are definitely better than kids at telling something real from fake. But even still to this day, people believe that the Will Smith slap was like 100% real. So like, I just I don't think adults necessarily have the upper hand on being able to tell when things are real versus fake just because they're adults. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people can't accept. And then it's not even about the way that old people talk about kids, in terms of kids these days just are not tough, or there's certain narratives that it's not even restricted among old people. You'll hear, I mean, I guess I don't know what you call old now, but you'll hear a lot of millennials saying the same shit about Zoomers that boomers say.
I mean, I recently learned what skibbity and riz it
Right.
mean. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have kids though, so I'm
Of
not
course.
I'm not supposed to be like anywhere close to that stuff.
Well, the only reason I even know about Skibbity Toilet is because it came up on my timeline,
Yeah.
where somebody was saying, like, it's funny, it's relevant to this, in that somebody was saying that kids aren't scared of anything. They sent, like, their kids sent Skibbity Toilet as a response to one of their teachers. And I'm like, what's skibbity toilet? So I looked it up and I'm like, okay, this is what that. And so then it made sense, you know. I knew it probably wasn't, it probably didn't make sense as a response without looking it up. But then once I looked it up, I'm like, oh, these kids are like on a different level concerning they troll in real life
Yeah.
because they're bored. I mean, not just because they're bored, but because they're not as stupid as people call them or think them to be. Because I don't know if people actually think that they're stupid or soft or I don't know. I don't know what compels people to simultaneously say some shit like Joe Biden is a fascist king, but then Gen Z is also like soft because you can't have both. If Joe Biden is like a fascist, then his kids are growing up with that shit. So none of it makes sense. But when you try to analyze where these frameworks are from where they're coming, you can see that a lot of them are like singular ideas that spread through not even just the manosphere, but it's like selling information to right wingers and white people in general is its own industry. So like for example, the Kendrick and Drake beef, there's the Kendrick and Drake beef, and then there's the beef that's being sold to white people as a product. And it's funny to see the beef that's being sold is like very surface level, uninformed, disconnected, but also very prominent. So you're going to see and hear a lot of white people. I think a lot of them are like tired of the beef, but they're still talking about it. But at this level where they don't really understand what's going on because they're getting it from um, commerce sources that make themselves out to be news outlets. And when people don't know when they're having information sold to them, they have a bad time being able to judge the quality of the information and at what level the information is actually relevant to the thing that they're trying to, I guess, learn about, but not really. Because it's this weird, like the way that white people do safaris is kind of like an information safari where they don't really want to immerse themselves in the culture, but they want to like casually observe and be just informed enough that they can get rid of the FOMO that they're getting from seeing other people excited about this thing. Like they need to know just enough that if it comes up at a water cooler, then they can be like, oh yeah, Kendrick made this song and then Drake made a diss track back and then Kendrick said something about his kid and they can casually educate other people about it for the other people who are the same mind but they don't do enough research to then know the casual information, so the people who are like informed just enough to know the basics of it can then use that as social capital to have a conversation. Because I don't know if you remember, like before movies were really ubiquitous in terms of being on the internet, people would lie about having seen films and just act like they knew what happened in a film based on either the trailer or from piecing it together from hearing other people talk about it. And so you'd have these conversations about movies where people would claim to have seen a movie just to participate in the conversation, not even really contributing anything, but just because they didn't want to be left out. And so I think that's where pre-internet, there's this weird time where like, especially summer blockbuster movies would produce sayings and catchphrases like Clueless is one of the big ones that I think like Valley Girl speak became popular from Clueless. And I don't even know if people even realize when that became popular, but it was explicitly once Clueless became a big cult hit, you had a bunch of teenagers trying to talk like Alicia Silverstone. And then the accent just basically stuck nationwide. So then you got a bunch of teenagers talking like Valley Girls to be counterculture, and then it just kind of stuck. And then it became ubiquitous. But if you go back before Clueless, Valley Girl speak was not a thing in popular culture. And so knowing how that shit spread then, but seeing how trends spread now, there are limited ceilings on trends because of social media's rapid replacement of the previous trend with another one. So I think it's very difficult for something like the last time everybody did the same dance was like the Dougie or something. I don't even know.
I can't even think of what is the last like internet dance thing that happened
that everybody did,
that everyone did.
Like
I see a lot.
Don't think they're.
I see a lot of Chinese dolls doing the robot now.
I know what it was. The whip and the nene. The whip and the nene were from the internet, and so that's like there were songs then that got associated, but I think those were potentially like maybe if I thought about it, I might be able to think of another one. But as of things that really got popular, there's a couple dances where it's like flossing got really popular. They shoot and dance where it's like they're like kicking and like I don't even know how to describe it. Like you like are skipping backwards and like pumping your fist in a forward motion, and then you like do it underhanded. Like that one became very popular for a while. But then here's another thing that happened. Addison Rae, I don't know if you remember her.
No, I don't.
Okay. So what happened is Jimmy Fallon brought this, I don't know if she was a teenager. I think she might have been like late teenager at the time. He brought her on his late night show, has her do a bunch of TikTok dances with no spice, basically stealing them from a bunch of Black creators that were the ones creating the dances. And so people were like, you can't, okay, you can do this, but because you're going to do this, we're not going to dance anymore. So basically, people started going on strike from doing TikTok dances because people like Addison Rae were just coming and stealing them and then getting catapulted. Like she got a fucking like Netflix movie or some shit because she stole some dances and did them poorly. And so this upset people to the point that Jimmy Fallon then ended up trying to like make up for it and he brought the Black creators that made the dances on, but brought them on via Zoom and had them do their dances basically like one at a time. And it was this half-assed attempt to be like, oh, we hear you. We're trying to apologize. And in bringing on a bunch of black creators and basically giving them the same amount of time as they gave one Addison Rae, he proved again that they didn't value the black creators and they didn't understand the mistake that they had made in the first place. And so that's where the TikTok dance boycott really stuck. And so that is why you haven't really seen dances get popular in the last few years, because creators straight up started boycotting TikTok as a form of outlet because they couldn't protect their dances from TikTok or from Fortnite, because then you realize Fortnite is coming and fucking selling these dances as emojis and making money off of it, and also not giving the creators any fucking royalties. So you have this like massive theft of dance intellectual property, because as a physical outlet, it's in this weird gap where if you're not a big creator, you're going to succumb to the terms of service of the platforms on which you create if you don't create master recordings of these dances before you put them on the platforms. So this, and what that translates to is, if I do a dance and nobody else has seen it, and the first time I record it is with TikTok's streaming service, they actually get licensed to sell that dance and then get more control over that dance in some cases than I do as a creator, because they have a recording of it and I gave them permission to sell it and to use it when I signed up for their service. And so a lot of people who were creators didn't think that the terms of service would get abused in the way that it was getting abused. And so the actual result was a full-on boycott, to the tune of now we can't even think of a fucking dance that got popular because the boycott has been so strong. But also the people who were the ones fucking creating the dances stopped creating the dances in a ways that they could just be stolen. So now it ain't no fucking new Dougies. It ain't no nays and whips. Like that's what happened. So seeing it happen the way it did, I do feel like people are, especially kids, are more aware that your identity and your fucking movements can be stolen, your face can be stolen and sold with your consent, because you didn't even realize you gave your consent, because all you were trying to do was get on some fucking stupid popular app. And so having that happen to them multiple times, I think kids are a lot wiser. But another thing that's happened is they have protections in Europe that we don't yet have in America. And so European protections are then forcing agencies like TikTok to comply with protection for minors that they would not have necessarily enforced if those laws weren't existent in Europe. Like the right to be forgotten is one big thing that I think they might have it in California now. And it's like they're starting to try to get it implemented across the United States. But ultimately what the problem is between social media and minors is minors can't really give consent. So when you have a parent that wants to exploit their child via social media, most kids don't really have any say in the matter, especially when it gets popular. So the laws are now starting to change in America to help protect the children in ways that once you realize that they were actually like not protecting the kids because other laws now protect them, the industries are exploitation, and commerce has been co-opted by these industries to make it seem as if any form of commerce is the same as this type of exploitation. But I don't think kids are falling for it. Whatever you want to call it, you can call it capitalism. It doesn't matter what you call it. Kids are wising up to this type of exploitation, and the laws are slowly catching up to be able to protect them. And so that's where I'm like, all that roundabout to say, these kids, not only are they not soft, they're smarter, they're more aware, they are more resilient, and the laws are finally starting to fall in line to protect them, which is why I think there is such a, it's like the hurt animal in the form of the right wing that's trying to lash out and survive this. You know, the most dangerous animal is a
One that's
an
cornered.
injured one, right? Injured and cornered. So that's where I'm like, that's what's happening with right wing ideas. They know they can't survive another generation of kids who are, they were able to hide the effects of right wing policy before. And that's why they were able to keep it proliferating. Now you can't hide the child labor in other countries. You can't hide the pollution. You can't hide the effects of climate change. You can't hide all of the fucking teenagers who thought that they were going to serve their country, who come back maimed or don't come back at all. You can't fucking hide that shit from the kids anymore. So they're not growing up stupid. They're not growing up making it seem like it's left or right. They know right wing is the party of death, and left wing is at least not death when it's actually left, because you have these centrists and these fake left wingers that call themselves leftists and are Democrats, but they don't actually give a fuck about left wing ideals. They're just power hungry sycophants. And the kids aren't stupid. The adults are stupid. The adults can't tell the difference between a fucking power hungry sycophant that puts on a D and puts on blue and somebody who actually cares about social justice. The kids aren't that fucking stupid. So I think this is why the right wing is trying to, well, not trying. This is why the right wing is taking away women's rights. This is why the right wing is taking away the right to choose. This is why the right wing is taking away transgender rights and access to medicine for people that like don't need any special care. This is, they're taking it away for everyone. So this is something they also can't hide from Generation Z. So it's like there's gonna be,
or the alphas. They'll never hide it from the alphas. The
no,
alphas,
no way.
Those kids are fucking insane. They'll see that. They'll see right through it.
So the Zennials and the alphas and all these kids that they, well, and okay, even more so, there's more of these kids in that generation on the continent of Africa than there are people in America altogether. So when you talk about that generation, you're not just talking about American kids. And so when you have these stupid fucking adults that can't fathom how many of these kids there actually are, but also don't understand that a lot of these kids grew up in situations where they weren't allowed to be children and had to grow up and had to deal with carrying the fucking responsibility of the house, or even worse, didn't have a fucking house and grew up without a house, without a home, then you can understand why those people are so disconnected. Because I think the issue is like the notion that some kid had it easy just because they were a kid is like, it's some of the most ivory tower thinking. But you have working class Americans who live in an ivory tower because they don't understand how much worse it can get. Now, you don't even have to travel outside of America. You can travel to Appalachia. You can travel to a fucking reservation. It gets much worse than working class America, and they just are so wrapped up in their own fucking inability to get out of their own bullshit because they don't actually try hard, that they want to put it off on kids as if kids are the problem. But really, it's working class Americans who never leave their fucking state, who never leave their county, who never leave their country, and can't fathom actual opposition or actual uh, problems in life to get over, because the things that Americans have to deal with aren't real problems. Like, yeah, getting pregnant and not being able to get an abortion or get proper medical care, that's a real problem.
That's a first world problem.
It's totally a first world problem. So
That's a problem
it's
of
a
the
matter
future,
of
not a
like,
problem of like.
and it's not even a problem of the future. It's a problem of the past that we have regressed to because we have.
I'm just thinking
leftists.
in terms of like places that have zero healthcare infrastructure and have like no representative.
For them, it's definitely
like,
a problem of the
problem
future. But for America, it's a problem of the past. That's where I'm saying, like, that's actually, we've regressed. And so in that regression, we have to then retread the same path that we tread 60 years ago to get back to where we were, whereas other countries don't have, some of them are drifting back to the right and drifting back to the past, but every country isn't making those same mistakes. So there's elements of what's happening in America.
I'm pretty sure even in the regressive countries in like, you know, Eastern Europe, those places still have secured like the right to abortion. Like it's not,
for the most part.
So it's on some level
they have the right, but they don't necessarily have the access, and that's where it becomes like the reality of socialized medicine that gets defunded because of right-wing policies. In they're not as polarized in other countries because they have more parties that are viable, but it's still polarized in a lot of Western countries to the point that it just is basically left and right, and it's hard right, and there's no like moderate right. And what I'm realizing is we lost the chance at a moderate right when, number one, Howard Dean ceased being a viable candidate as a young, passionate, educated left-winger. And then also when Mitt Romney ceased being a candidate, it's not even really, okay, let me rephrase that. Howard Dean wasn't young. He was way younger than these old fucks we have now. And Mitt Romney,
when they started comparing him to Smeagol and
right. Yeah. So the slander campaign and libel, because it was in print too, that went against Howard Dean is when we kind of stopped having the capacity to have intelligent, uncompromised candidates in the Democratic Party. And when Mitt Romney lost, that's when it stopped having the possibility on the Republican side. And we've been dealing with this popularity contest election ever since. And it's like, I know hindsight is 2020. It's obviously, but it's like 40-20 for me, because I'm looking at like Ralph Nader and fucking Ross Perot and fucking Mitt Romney now, and like they are actually, a lot of their policies are like to the left of Biden.
Man, a lot of those like guys' policies seem really reasonable now.
I mean, like that's really that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's like, not only do they seem reasonable, there's some of them are just straight up left of fucking Biden, where it's like I said, I know hindsight is 2020, but for me, it's 40-20 in that there is something about the political cycle that also makes people forget what has happened. And in not being part of the partisan cycle, I have not forgotten anything, let alone the third party candidates. And when third party, it wasn't viable, but it was viable enough to affect the election in ways that they were worried about it. They're not even worried about Jill Stein now, Dr. Jill Stein. Like, she should have been, based on her policies, she should have been a threat to at least 3% of the vote, enough to make both Trump and fucking Biden at least have to acknowledge her existence. You don't hear shit about Dr. Jill Stein.
She is running for president in 2024.
Yeah, of course. I mean, and that's where I mean, like, the idea that a third party candidate who has good policies can just straight up be ignored by the main two parties is the result of non-viable candidates being pushed out of both parties. Or not, let me rephrase that. Not viable. Non-compromised candidates being pushed out of both parties at points when they would have actually been able to push back against big industry and military industrial. So in those cases, military industrial won the election, and big industry, whether it's pharmaceutical or big oil, won the election, no matter which candidate it was, no matter which party it was. And so when we have people who are compromised by political action committees and super PACs that guarantee them payments after they exit office to the tune of all you have to do is go along with our industry while you're in office. Now we have, oh my God.
Man, Newsweek is reporting that the Green Party is getting a surge of support from disgruntled Democrats.
I don't buy it. I mean, I think there's probably a bunch of Democrats who are threatening it, who are still going to end up voting for Biden because they don't have backbones like that. Because if they're just now finding out about Jill Stein, then they're not fucking serious about even looking at it and considering a third party. It's just a fucking balk, in my opinion, based on what I've seen in like all the elections in my lifetime.
I believe the Newsweek is reporting that.
Yeah, I believe Newsweek is reporting it. What I believe is really happening is you have a bunch of Democrats who are threatening to vote Green Party, but aren't even going to vote Green Party even if Biden doesn't get replaced, because they were never serious about considering Green Party, which is why they don't know how good Jill Stein is as a candidate, because her policies are fucking amazing almost across in the entire board. And it's frustrating to see such a good candidate who's also so educated, like, just not even really be considered, because it's like, you know, this is why I don't really think politics are ever going to solve anything, because I don't know if they were ever uncompromised, but they've definitely been compromised to the point that you have way better candidates than Joe Biden to run for solving problems based on his literal record as president, losing rights to abortion for women across the entire fucking country. That's a terrible record. When somebody brings that up, God forbid fucking Trump I wouldn't put it past Trump.
Of course he's going to
use
that.
Biden's own record of failures to hold up Democratic policies against a right-wing legislation as a line of attack against him. I'm not watching it. I'm not watching any of these fucking debates, but I wouldn't put it, he might have done it already, but I wouldn't put it past him. So that's the problem when you run on, I'm going to restore women's rights of votes or right to abortion, because you didn't fucking protect it your goddamn first term. So why should anybody believe that he's going to fucking restore it in his second term when he couldn't fucking protect it the first one? So like, it's so disconnected to be at this point where we have this fucking tyrant who won't, this motherfucker ran on one goddamn term. He fucking ran on one term and won't let go of the reins of power fuck them. I don't care what happens to this party because this party fucking sucks. Yeah, the Republicans are worse, but this party sucks enough. I don't care anymore. I don't care. I tried to like, I literally voted in 2020 because I gave Biden the benefit of the doubt on this one issue that he would work hard enough to protect abortion rights, knowing that if he wanted to run a second term, I'm like in my head, oh, this guy's probably going to want a second term. So if he really wants a second term, at least he's going to protect abortion rights. What's this motherfucker do? Not protect abortion rights. So why the fuck would I think that he would fucking reinstate him when the entire goddamn reason I held my nose and voted for him the first time was on this one fucking thing. Just this one fucking thing. I didn't care about reparations. I do care about reparations. I don't think that's going to happen. I didn't care about defund the police in the sense of like, I know they're not going to actually defund the police. I know they're not going to fucking defund the military. So when he never promised any of those things, but I'm not going to sit there and hold my vote over those things. Women's right to abortion existed on record, on law, before he entered office. That was the one thing where I'm like, you should at least not only be able to protect it, you should do an executive order to fucking enshrine it so that they can't attack it until they go after the executive order first, and then they'd have to go after Roe versus Wade, because it would make it way more difficult to protect or to attack abortions if there was a fucking executive order in the way. But what did this motherfucker do? Sit on his hands, sit on his old ass fucking octogenarian hands and did nothing. So why am I gonna fucking trust him? Why? I'm not. That was a rhetorical question for anybody who comes and tries to say, well, what about black rights? I don't trust him for fucking black rights. You think I trust Jim Crow Joe, who was working with the fucking segregationists 60 years ago or 50 years ago, whenever the fuck his old ass was working with the fucking racists, and now he wants to protect black rights that he helped strip away? No, I'm not like, and I'm also not going to be made to feel as if my abstinence from the election somehow makes me less American or somehow makes me less of a fucking activist by some fucking white liberal Democrat. Not happening this year. It never happened before, but they tried in ways before where I let them off the hook. I'm not accepting any of that rhetoric. If any white liberal comes at me with some of that rhetoric this year, I might slap him. I might just straight slap him and then be like, you know what? This is what happens when you do some shit like that on somebody who has fucking genetic trauma from slavery, and then try to make them seem like my activism isn't fucking good enough if I don't do it your way. You might get slapped. You might just straight up get slapped in 2024. I'm too fucking old for that shit, for somebody to be saying that shit to the point where if they say that shit to me online, I might find the time to track them down and slap them. Not like hurt them, just slap them like, oh, I'm challenging you to a duel type slap shit. That's the shit I'm on in 2024, because I'm fucking tired of white liberals acting like they care about black people, but when it comes time, they don't. They don't. When it comes time to fucking change the police, they don't. When it comes time to change the laws, when it comes time to protect diversity, equity, inclusion, they don't. They fucking get worried about the vote, and they get worried about the election, and they stop caring about black people if it's not in the fucking election's best interest. And I'm fucking tired of it. I was tired of it in 2020. I was already tired of it, but it wasn't about me. It was about women's right to choose then, but we ain't even fucking got that shit anymore. So I'm about to get selfish as fuck, because I ain't got no fucking out. They have no more protections on anybody else for me to be altruistic about, for me, I'm getting selfish now. Because guess what? Who are they protecting? Who are they protecting besides fucking Israel weapons? Huh? Ukraine weapons. Who are they protecting? More goddamn money to Ukrainian weapons and fucking Israeli weapons than my goddamn healthcare. Than your healthcare. Anybody who's listening to it.
I want to add Chinese batteries to the list.
You too. None of anybody listening, anybody hearing the sound of my voice, they've spent more money on fucking Ukrainian weapons and fucking Israeli weapons than you too. So what are we trying to protect here? That's all I'm asking. What
the advanced military industrial pipeline?
Because remember when they was trying to say we needed to start Kurdistan too? It's the same motherfuckers that tried to convince us we need to start Kurdistan in Syria. Same motherfuckers. Yeah, that was these Democrats. And again, I'm not about to vote fucking Republican. Nah, that's not what this is about. Fuck all Republicans. Fuck everybody on the right wing. Just so we're clear, this is not what this is about. This is about being infiltrated. This is about John Fetterman being a right winger. This is about Brianna Wu being a right winger. This is about all the fucking right wing plants. Cenk Uger's a fucking right winger now. I mean, he always was, but you got all these people who pretended to care about social justice. Now they're doing their fucking right-wing grift shit. And so those were the same liberals trying to fucking shame us into voting for Biden when Biden was lying to us about only wanting one term. So it's like there's pundits and then there's politicians and then there's people. And I feel like a lot of Americans want to play pundit and politician in their daily life, but also don't want to acknowledge that these pundits and politicians don't fucking give a fuck about any of us. But a lot of Americans don't care about other people either. And so that apathy and lack of empathy, I don't want to call it a virus because it may be genetic. I'm not going to say it's genetic. It may be. I'll entertain the notion that it may be. But I think it's mostly learned behavior and mostly because a lot of American families have no real values, Christian or not. And a lot of their values are so based around materialism that if you take away someone's job, they might be liable to delete themselves and delete their whole family in the process because they don't actually have any values upholding their existence besides just work, show up to work on time. That's all I need to do to be a good moral, ethical person, to the point that capitalism does what it does. It fucking usurped values. And so now people think, okay, this is why fucking Martin Luther was mad. It's not even new. I feel like not enough people know the original Martin Luther to know why Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. has the fucking name Martin Luther in the first place. But capitalism, before capitalism was a full-on paradigm, because this was pre-industrialism, they were already selling salvation. And so Martin Luther was like, hey, you can't fucking do that. You can't do that. You can't let these motherfuckers go over there and war and pillage and then come back and let them buy salvation with the fucking money they stole from the people they killed. You can't do that. And the idea, that's why we don't learn about Martin Luther in regular school. It's funny, like the only reason I even really know about Martin Luther, they teach about him later in like special history classes if you go to them or if you take them in high school. and in college, but you're not just going to learn about Martin Luther as an American. And so, uh, and the only other place you will learn about him is in a Lutheran church. And so I was fortunate enough to be like, if I stayed over somebody's house as a kid and they went to church, well, I had to go to church with them. And so that was like one of the things where my parents enforced that rule, even if it wasn't their religion. It was like, nah, if you're going to stay, you got to go to church with them. And so I couldn't use it. Like, I would try to do everything in my power not to go to church service. Like, I can't tell you how many times I sat in the car listening to Casey Kasem fucking DJ until somebody came out and got me to go into the church service. Like, because my parents knew what I was doing, and I would like get my breakfast and like just be like, oh yeah, I'm finishing breakfast, and then sit there and listen to the radio just to avoid going in church. So not only would I do that, I would like stay over at friends' houses that didn't go to church, even though they weren't like my best friend, versus like I had some best friends who would then go to church where I'm like, we can stay over there Friday night, and then I'll stay over my other friends on Saturday night, and then I don't have to go to church. So in my little kid head, I'm like actually coming up with ways to avoid fucking going to church. And my parents even know this. So they're then trying to make it so that like I don't use going over somebody else's house as a means to get out of it. Anyway, going to one of these friends' churches, I realized that like not all churches are as rigid about education. Not all churches are as mysticized or like esoteric in how they approach the Bible or spirituality. And so seeing the different types of approaches to information, I'm like, oh shit, I can actually understand Martin Luther, because then you see these churches on the other extreme where they're like speaking in tongues and like trying to sell salvation by people passing around the collection plate, where you get these people, you know, they're doing fucking terrible shit throughout the week, but you make them think that all they have to do is come to church on Sunday and put money in the collection plate, and that's fine. It's the same fucking shit that Martin Luther was upset about. So understanding the connection between that historical event and modern mega churches, and it's not even just mega church, any church that tries to sell salvation, you can't make that connection if the only Martin Luther you know is the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so that's also where I think a lot of American education centers on making people highly ignorant of people like the first Martin, oh, no, I won't say the first, the most famous first Martin Luther versus the one who they killed and turned into a holiday. Because that's also part of it, is like, if then Dr. Martin Luther King replaces OG Martin Luther in people's minds, then they've killed two fucking intellectual birds with one stone. And that's what idea killers thrive on.
There are 80 million Lutherans in the world today.
Well, and you never hear of them because they don't really proselytize like that.
No, they, let's see, what is this thing saying?
Here's something funny. Have you ever had somebody try to convert you to Islam? I know the answer. No. Because they don't do that. So it's funny to see like Christians project their proselytization on even other sects such as Lutherans.
Wait, I can get down on this.
Jesuits don't really proselytize as much as other ones.
The three beliefs of the Lutheran Church are grace alone, faith alone, and Scripture alone. So it seems like a very personal thing.
It is. And I wouldn't have known if I hadn't gone with one of my friends. So it's like, if I would have never gone to a Lutheran church, I would just assume it's like any other church. And well, minus the fact that it's clearly trying to reference Martin Luther. So I would assume they would have more connection to his tenets than other churches that don't name themselves after him. But even in that, there's a lot of variety in the way that Christian churches are named that like have you ever been to an apostolic church?
No.
Okay. Those are have you ever seen the movie Leap of Faith with Steve Martin?
Yes, I have.
So
Wait, it's like a big tent show.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not about the tent so much as the apostolic people are the ones you're gonna find most likely to be doing faith healing and also like giving testimony about shit that if you don't double check on them, you'll think that their church is the one that is connected to Jesus himself. Like every single apostolic church is like that. I mean, not every single. Okay, there's like first and second, just like First and Second Baptist. Um, but it's like first in my. I think it's first are gonna be like yeah they're like putting hands on people and like, oh, you got cancer, I'm gonna heal that in this service with this prayer, and like 1,000% believing it and telling people that they healed your cancer and made you walk. Um, but like every Christian sect isn't even remotely like that. So then you get Southern Baptists that can drift into that. Like the more rural a Southern Baptist church, the more likely they're going to be doing some shit that you're gonna very like. That's the difference in that in an apostolic church, you're gonna see that shit everywhere in the fucking city, in the country, it don't matter. But Southern Baptist, like that's where the more rural you go, the more likely you are to actually end up in some like horror movie type shit where you're like, oh fuck, this is a like full on cult, and like I didn't realize this shit was real. Like, okay, I don't know how much experience you have at church, but there's like
Very limited.
so there's a certain type of church where they'll have like pamphlets in the back. And if you have pamphlets in the back of the church, you are 75 to 95% in a cult building. Like, and so the variety of like what's in those pamphlets is going to tell you how much the people you just were around are putting on a show because you're there and like holding back versus sometimes they don't even hold back. And if they don't hold back, then it's probably way worse than what you even saw. So it's like I'll never forget one of the pamphlets I found from one of these churches was like talking about the mark of the beast and like how it's like one of the symbols for the Catholic Church. If you dissect it and break it down, it becomes a pentagram, and then that becomes the mark of the beast. And this is how you tell people who are in the Illuminati. And then you find out, like, in this pamphlet, they're saying, like, oh, people like Michael Jordan and the Pope and Bill Clinton are all in this Illuminati. And it's like trying to give you, as the person reading the pamphlet, all these things to look for to know if somebody's in the Illuminati. Well, and even then, okay, this is where they would use the Freemasons and Illuminati interchangeably. So this is where they would be like, oh, Michael Jordan's a Freemason, but the Pope is also a Freemason. And this is where they overlap as to where the Catholic, like, oh, yeah. So I don't know. We're not monetized, so on this one, I don't have to worry about anything. And also, I'm reporting, so I haven't said it yet. That's why I'm like, let me give a very big disclaimer before I say this, because this is something that I experienced myself. This is not like I didn't make this up. This is not like some shit I heard. Like, one of these pamphlets would go on to then claim that Catholics were doing like baby sacrifice and fucking blood sacrifice and cooking babies and all this shit, where you're like, that's where I'm like, I don't even want to fucking say it, knowing I've heard these things about multiple religions. Like, you hear it about Muslims, you hear it about Jewish people, you hear it about Catholics, you hear it about Christians. So knowing that this, okay, depending on when they're saying it about, sometimes it is historical and other times it's blatantly, like, if it's about in modern times, it's like more than likely racist propaganda that's more than likely anti-Semitic, or I don't know what, like anti-Roma or Roman, if it's about like the Catholic Church. But then obviously there's like Islamophobia in the modern stuff. But if it's like, this is another problem. Historical accounts do the same shit. So even if somebody's saying it in the 1700s, they might be making it up to be racist too. And you don't really know, because obviously they didn't have cameras, but it's really difficult unless you can find multiple resources on things like that to know if someone's just being racist or if it was actually something that was happening. Most of the times it's just flat out racism, which is then also why you can't even say unless it's a historical account, because a lot of those historical accounts were just lies too. All that said, seeing these pamphlets in the backs of these churches as a child, knowing that I'm discerning enough to read, like, because the only reason I even remember it is because I took one and like showed it to somebody I went to school with because they didn't believe these pamphlets existed. And they're like reading it like, what the fuck is this shit? And that's where I'm like, yeah, there's this whole element of COINTELPRO and disinformation campaigns that it's not just at Black people. It takes place in white churches too. But they're not the same disinformation campaigns in the Black churches and the white churches, to the point that if you can, what I also didn't realize is not a lot of people go between those spaces. So if you're like a First Baptist, you might go to a white church and you might go to a Black church, but you're not going to go to a Second Baptist or a Southern Baptist church, more than likely. And if you're apostolic, you might actually go to a white apostolic church or a Black one. That's not the difference. It's that they stick to their Christian sects in ways that allow this misinformation and disinformation campaign to be focused around very specific ideologies instead. Like, there's race elements to it as well, but they get even more diabolical with focusing on Again, like the propaganda that's in a Southern Baptist church is going to be different than one that's in apostolic.
Hmm. Yeah, my experiences with church have always been with my grandmother. That's really it. Occasionally, I've attended like Methodist church service before, um, but never like regularly. I was just never really interested in going and sitting around and doing that, I guess.
I've gone to Methodist churches too. They're pretty they're pretty middle of the road between um tradition and like, okay, this is another big difference. Like Methodist, Episcopal,
Anglican, Presbyterian.
any Anglican, Presbyterian, they're gonna have a program and they're gonna hit that shit on the dot. Where I've never been to one of those churches and have them not get out exactly the scheduled time. And I'm like, I don't want to think that it's really that they're trying to get to football, but because of the way that the sermons and the services are laid out, I think it's just so uh top down that it's very easy for them to be very consistent with their schedules. So I'm like, and then on that note, if you go to a First Baptist black church, they're going to be out on time. But a Southern Baptist black church,
That's like a party.
I mean, it's a party where all the kids are fucking exhausted because their parents won't leave and won't be the first to leave. So goddamn every kid is basically on the verge of like tears and like they're hungry and you don't know when you're gonna go get to eat because there's usually food afterwards too. So then it's like, yeah, it is a fucking party. But if you don't get to that food till 2:30, you might have been there since 9 a.m. and all you can do is think about that food from like 11 o'clock on. And then you got to sit there through the fucking
no.
Will a man rob God? Yet he has robbed me. And then you go through the all the parts that are the standard parts, but then the parts where the preachers and the singers want to like freestyle and like improvise and shit. And then people want to give their testimonies and like you can't stop somebody want to testify about how good God is. Well, guess what? That motherfucker might go for 10 minutes because now they started testifying and they want to sing a song too. And they got the mic now. And now the whole church got to listen to them. And it's like that shit every fucking Sunday, where, cause then you realize there's always at least two of the fucking, okay, if there's a male pastor, even if he's married, there's always at least two women in the congregation that are gonna fucking show out to try to get pastors' attention, and that takes many forms. Sometimes that's in the form of a testimony. Sometimes that's in the form of catching the Holy Ghost. And if it's the Holy Ghost, then they might fucking fake pass out. Like you, man, this lady, I want her. I'll use her initials, HB. HB every Sunday would catch the Holy Ghost, and then this other lady would catch the Holy Ghost while HB was catching the Holy Ghost, and HB would then get louder and get more theatric, and then I know she passed out at least once. Maybe it may have became like her like
that was her thing.
I don't know if you ever watched Drag Race, where it's like if somebody does a splits or a death drop or like they walk the duck, then everybody has to start doing it. And it's like once HB started passing out, then other people would start passing out from the Holy Ghost. And so it became this thing where I'm like, as a kid, I could see what was happening, and the adults would gossip about it afterwards. So they knew what was happening, and then I would see the adults gossiping. So then I knew that they knew what was happening. And so there was this big charade that was like, everybody's lying to each other and everybody's doing this fucking dance in the name of piety. And as a kid, it was so gross, but so transparent that I think a lot of kids who grow up now get the same grossness with politics and society and church. But it's not when you see it's not present in every church, then it also gives you the capacity to not disregard all spirituality or all religion just because 95% of the people that do it wrong. Because yeah, again, I learned about Martin Luther at a Lutheran church that taught history correctly, and nobody was wearing dress up clothes. That was another thing I hated, was like dressing up, because there was this notion of like you had to put on your Sunday best or whatever, but I didn't like that as a kid. And so seeing Lutherans dressed down, talking about history, and also not being weird about literalism, that's where I'm like, oh, everybody's not a fucking lunatic about their religion. So it definitely stuck with me, but also then seeing the American education system firsthand, that's when I'm like, oh, you actually can't teach people about Martin Luther in capitalism, because he was fighting against everything. I mean, not just Martin Luther, but if you accurately teach Jesus and the teachings of Jesus, Jesus was against what we call capitalism. So it's like you can't teach Jesus or Martin Luther accurately in capitalism without actually undermining people's capacity to then reject capitalism as a framework, because it's not the only framework, and capitalism is not commerce. And once these things can be articulated confidently, then people can start to think about other ways to do commerce without exploiting at every fucking turn. And that's why capitalism is on its last leg, in my opinion.
I mean, that's just one of the indicators, one of the many indicators. I keep reading about,
it's like, an indicator. It's not why. Yeah, it's not why.
I keep reading about how, like, the automotive industry isn't what it was, and vehicle lines are being shelved, and production numbers are not like reaching expectations, because the board wants perpetual profits, unlimited growth, because that's what the Kool-Aid that's what you get when you drink the Kool-Aid. You believe in unlimited growth, unsustainable unlimited growth. And then I read about how, like, Tesla managed to recoup all of their 2023 losses in this last quarter with 27% run on their stock value. And when I look at that curve, it looks an awful lot like a cryptocurrency. Like almost trailing cryptocurrency valuations. It's really fucked up.
Oh, you mean the company that was investing or taking Dogecoin supposedly and then pumping and dumping Dogecoin?
Yeah, that one. That same company? Yeah.
Oh, there's no way they'd ever pump and dump their own stock. That would never happen.
It's pretty crazy though, because there's still, you know, there are evangelists everywhere. But I think you're right. I think it's because the news cycle, the information cycle is so fast. It's getting easier and easier to spot the commercial, and it just gets easier every time to just disregard the commercial. I don't even see commercials actually. Like I when I was in Texas, I got to watch television for the first time in like years, and I hadn't seen commercials like that before. Also, I was in front of like 100-inch 8K TV that, man, I didn't realize there was that much texture on French fries or fried chicken. I I had no idea that
Shit.
watermelons look like that.
It's a wake up going from internet existence, especially internet existence with ad blocker, to television. It's jarring, and I understand from where ADHD comes when I see television. In that, I know some people naturally have ADHD, um, but I would bet money that a good 90 to 95% of people's ADHD is just from the way that television operates. Um, we shouldn't have our short term memory wiped every 11 minutes, every 30 seconds in those 11 minutes. And it's like, I know once you saw the TV, when you, the sensation I'm about to describe is something you only can experience from either probably dementia or commercials. When you're watching something and a commercial suddenly has your intent or your attention, and then you have no idea what you were just watching or what channel you're even watching. Like, is it Cartoon Network? Is it Comedy Central? I don't know. This commercial just wiped my short and long term memory.
Well,
Whatever it did, and that's where I'm like, that's only a sensation that I've never had dementia, but I imagine that's the only other probably time you feel something like
so
that.
because I don't watch like cable television at all. I recognize very quickly. Wait, this is MTV? Holy crap. What is this? And it's a show called The Challenge, and it's a bunch of absurd games. It's like an absurd Olympics where people do crazy challenges. Some people get really hurt in these challenges. Sometimes they have to eat or drink stuff that makes them puke just violently. I gotta admit, I was enthralled by it. Not necessarily the MTV reality world drama, but these challenges were actually quite impressive. Like feats of physical exertion that are just, who comes up with this crap? It was I would never come up with obstacle courses like that. I just wouldn't think of stuff like that. And then fried chicken commercial, or I can't even remember what some of these commercials were. They were just so visually stunning, and really it was this like quality of production that doesn't, I don't see that on the internet, because the internet's not trying to sell me, you know, a, a basket of chicken or a thing of extra textured French fries with 40% more surface area because of the crinkle cut. I remember that part. That really sold me. How do you increase the surface area of a French fry by 40%? It doesn't seem right. That's what MTV was trying to sell me. Oh, I think they were also trying to sell me uh, like adult diapers at one. It was a strange combination of things, because I'm so used to the internet giving me tailored ads to whatever it is I've been diving into for the past week, 2 weeks, however long it's been since I decided to clear my history. I'm just not used to the screen telling me what to look at. I'm used to telling it what to show me. And so it was a very it was so strange because I just couldn't look away. It was almost like watching an accident.
Well, and then okay, this is where I'm like, the way that they use edits and flashing lights
Oh man, that
is
gave me a
totally
headache.
just activating our fucking moth DNA. Where I'm like, yeah, a lot of commercials just end up grabbing our attention because it's like a fucking hot light that's like, oh, flashing, flashing. I need to look over this direction. It might be a threat. It might be sunrise. I don't know. Flashing, flashing. It might be a fucking Ozempic ad. It might be a fucking ad for a car that's supposedly coming out in 2023, but they're going to call it a 2024 for whatever reason. And whatever it is, they're gonna edit the fuck out of it, and it's not gonna have
You're never gonna see the whole
long
car.
shots.
You don't.
Right, never, not in one shot. Like it'll give you a half second from front view, then it'll cut to the side view, even though it's moving in the same direction on the same road. Then it'll cut to the other side, and then cut to zoom, and your brain is like, what the fuck is happening? All this light, and it don't even matter what the fuck it is because they're just flashing lights at a rate where we don't even perceive the flashes because they're happening at hertz that our eyes are so used to, but can still perceive that they're not conscious. And so this is where, to me, the conspiracy theory of how images and subliminal messaging were created, there is like subliminal messaging doesn't work, but biological response activation does. So if you can get someone's biological response to activate, that is just as good as subliminal messaging if it has the same end. And for food companies, it's the same end. So it's like,
Man,
if they can
if I
do,
could just get that flashing strobe program to run on my screen and so I can take a nap periodically, that'd be great. Whatever that is. That'd be fantastic. Download an application that strobes your screen gently until you pass out. Put on some nice mood music in the background. Light a candle. Activate strobe.
I'm pretty sure those exist. That's
I
what I'm
know, I
like.
know.
Like I'm fairly positive there's like a whole corner of YouTube dedicated to that. I know definitely the binaural beats,
Oh yeah.
but they were putting strobes with those at the same frequencies. Um, so that's what I'm like. I don't know if people are still doing it, but I know they were.
Those binaural beats. That was a really when that first started coming out on the internet. I remember there was this brief period where people were talking about using binaural music or binaural beats to induce different brain states. And I remember I downloaded this binaural audio player and pressed go, and all it did was make me like dizzy. It was a very strange experience. I tried to find the one that was supposed to make the brain activate and make everything what call it, be excited about things, enter a heightened state of arousal or whatever, so I could ingest more information or whatever I was trying to do. I don't even remember, but all it did was make me dizzy. I think there's a lot of like public alpha testing going on during that period. Unwitting participants in research conducted across the internet. every free game on like any of the Flash game sites.
Do those even still work?
Not anymore. That's something I'm pretty sure like was extinguished, but they got replaced with a different type of applet. Now it's all Java games,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
which is crazy because it turns out you can play a lot of really complex video games in JavaScript. Like, not even not even sure how they do it, but
Well, it's
obviously it's all browser based, and there's there are tons of these sites, and they like blow me away because there are so many games that it's like I don't have time to filter through any of this stuff, and then I just end up going and looking for like a an emulator site and playing some obscure Mario game that I haven't played yet. That's actually easier than filtering through like a million different games.
well, it's like game design, the complexity now is in the design itself because a lot of assets and functions are readily available so that
Yeah,
if you have an idea and you understand how to make it, just fundamentally, if you want to make it, you can go either use royalty or license free assets or commission somebody to do it, um, or build a team. And so I think that's where, if you look on Steam, a lot of, let me see. Some games are made by individuals, and then you would think that an individual wouldn't be able to do as much as the one can, but it's because they're leaning on the pre-made assets. And so
yeah,
if you can take pre-made assets and modify them just a little bit, you can then do something that looks well, especially with there's engines like RPG Maker, um fucking Mugen, there's like a fighting game maker. Um there's multiple game makers that basically make it so that all you have to do is put in the story and arrange where things go. Like the assets are pre-built, and then you just put the, like if you wanted to make Mike Tyson's Punch Out, it would have all the assets. You just have to, not an RPG Maker, but the other 2D. Um, you just have to put in the ring and the timer and the characters and give them names and give all the assets meaning, but you wouldn't have to create the assets necessarily. So knowing that, that's where game design to me has taken on this more artistic, well, okay, it was always an art, but I think the art is what's going to rise to the top now because it's actually so easy to make something that there's just so much crap out that people aren't going to spend time playing crap when they can just go find something else that's actually going to be fun. And you may have to sift through a bunch of shit, but it's worth it when you, because you know that there's just so many games out there that you'll eventually find something. And whereas when NES was the main console, in the first days of the NES, we didn't know if every game that we went and rented or went and bought was going to be good. So we were very picky, and people's collections were very limited because the games cost like $60 or $70 then. So it was like you couldn't just go get a fucking new Nintendo game every week. It was once maybe a quarter, if you're lucky, once maybe every 6 months, if you're lucky. And then for a lot of kids, it was just once a year, and that would be Christmas. And so you had to really figure out what games were worthy of your Christmas fucking request, because you might not get it. And if you're going to waste a Christmas request on a video game, you come back and you got the ET fucking video game, and you're sad. That's not what, no kid wants that experience. Like, just having the game wasn't enough. The game needed to give you the actual playtime that you could put in,
Man,
especially back then.
back then you had to. Nobody actually beat the games until like Nintendo Power released the walkthrough, and even then it was like a roll of the dice whether or not one would actually be able to follow it in and not die. Contra was hard. Like, OG Contra is actually really hard. Go back and if you can even find an original Nintendo controller, because those things aren't like the freaking like super controllers that we have now with velocity sensitive buttons or pressure sensitive buttons or actual joysticks. We have triggers now. We've got it good. We've got like flight sticks that are super sensitive and programmable. Zelda, I don't know anybody who beat that game until after the Nintendo Power came out for it. But then you jump ahead to like Sega Genesis, and then games like Sonic the Hedgehog, you can beat that in an afternoon of gameplay. Repeatedly, you can beat that thing over and over again.
Well, it was like when rental market became big, they had to start making games that you could beat in 5 hours.
Yeah.
More ubiquitous, because it would be, like you're saying, like Echo the Dolphin or Sonic the Hedgehog. Yeah, you just sit down, one rental weekend, you're beating that game and taking it back. And that was like the activity for the weekend. And then next weekend, you hopefully get Battle Axe or whatever, or Golden Axe, sorry, Altered Beast or whatever the thing was that came out.
Yeah, Altered Beast. That game could be beaten in like 20 minutes.
Right. For adults. And that's where for kids, they may not be able to ever beat it. Like the Ninja Turtles Nintendo game.
Oh, that game's actually really hard. Like, that game is actually super difficult.
And at that, I bet if you went back and played it now, you'd be like, this isn't as nearly as difficult as I remember. Because there's actually a YouTube channel dedicated to this very thing, where it's like, is it as difficult as I remember? And the guy goes back and like plays games the first time and sees how long it takes him to beat it. And he beat the Ninja Turtles game in like 35 minutes or something. Where it's like, I know a lot of people, the sewer where with the electric seaweed, that was like, it was very difficult to swim through that part, and a lot of people died there. I know anytime I would be able to get through, I might have maybe one life left and then die on top of the there was like a sewer wall or something where you emerge on top of it and fight, but by that time I wouldn't have enough lives left, and that would be like the farthest I get in that game as a kid. And I've never gone back and revisit as an adult, just because there's so many other things to play
that you'd rather do.
But then I watched him go back and play it, where I'm like, knowing it was like a 35-minute video, I'm like, okay, let me just skip to the sewer part basically, and then from there I realized, like, yeah, as an adult, back then, an adult may have had a slight difficulty with it. Unless they were a gamer, then they probably wouldn't have had a lot of difficulty with it. But just kids not having proper muscle control made shit like that way more difficult.
Yeah. It also wasn't anything like the arcade version of Ninja Turtles, which was really disappointing. I'm pretty sure that's the game that I actually wanted, not a side-scrolling platformer with top-down turtle van. That was the other issue with like a lot of those games or that era is that the um, the game didn't always meet the expectation of the marketing. I wonder how many Nintendo titles actually sell like, you know, the whole 30 million to get their Nintendo Classic Award or whatever.
Well, there was a period with I know Nintendo did this and Sega kind of did it, but whatever was on the cover, the art may be so misrepresentative of the gameplay that I think it was like Sword and the Sorcerer, maybe. Um, it's like you think it's like one thing, and then you play it, and then it's not that at all. But in your child mind, you got swayed by the cover.
Yeah. This is funny. So the list of best-selling Nintendo games is it's a Mario game, Animal Crossing. I have no idea what that is. Smash Brothers. That's basically a Mario adjacent game. No, that's a brawler. Never mind. Zelda, Mario, Pokemon, Mario, Zelda, Mario, Ring Fit Adventure, huh? Pokemon, Luigi, Splatoon, Mario, Sports, Mario Party, Splatoon, Mario, Monster Hunter, Kirby, Suka, Zelda, Minecraft. Okay, now we're down to like less than 10 million. So, let's see, they've only got. Where's the bottom of this list? They've got 93 games that have sold more than 1 million copies. And the top, like wherever I stopped, that was pretty much all Mario and Pokemon.
Well, Nintendo hasn't really been shy about focusing on children's market. Like,
Yeah.
I think Sony and Microsoft are fighting over the adults, where Nintendo just said, "Fuck it, we only care about the kids and adults who were playing games with their kids."
Yeah.
To say the Switch isn't a good console, or the this what is it, the Switch U or whatever it's called, the newest one. It's
Uh,
definitely a good console, but I think the game selection just,
the OLED Switch is the latest.
as an adult, like,
Man, if I'm going
I
to spend
know,
$350, how much is a Steam Deck?
I think they have them for that, or maybe even cheaper for the ones um less disk space.
It's $400 for the 256 gigabyte Steam Deck on Steam powered.
Oh, they must have just had a sale. That's what I
Yeah,
was thinking.
that's still a better computer than the Switch, like vastly superior computer.
Well, and then there's the Acer Rally. I think that's what it's called,
And then
or
the
Asus.
Asus makes one, and Lenovo makes one, and there are a whole bunch of alternatives to Steam Deck, and they're all like vastly superior computers to a Switch, and they can all host an emulator and play any Nintendo game in existence. I mean, if one is, willing to go through the extra steps. They're already playing games on a Steam Deck, so they're obviously people who do that are willing to go through extra steps.
Well, and this is where to me, Nintendo's either selling nostalgia or
there's a $300 Steam Deck, 64 gigabytes LCD.
Yeah, I thought that. Yeah,
that's still a superior. That's definitely a superior computer to a Nintendo Switch.
Yeah. But again, Nintendo is either selling nostalgia or
kid safe.
Child. Yeah, exactly. Like child safe content. Because if I'm an adult that doesn't have kids, why would I not choose something that could use the valves like Steam? It just, even if it's not about the Steam store, PlayStation and Xbox would still be superior consoles for an adult who doesn't have children, just because of you're gonna, not be able to play Grand Theft Auto 6 on a fucking Switch when it comes out. Yeah, okay. Good luck with that.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I mean, the kids don't fucking care, of course, but adults not being able to play GTA 6 when it finally comes out when we're grandparents or all octogenarians like Biden, whatever.
I mean, we're gonna be heads in jars by the time GTA 6 happens. We're gonna be able to experience the GTA 6 universe like we're there. That's what I'm counting on at this point, because I'm pretty sure they're just gonna try and milk us forever they can with GTA 5 at this point. The only thing that's like the consistent track with what we've gotten so far, which is fine.
Well, and that's another that GTA situation where they sold so much that they stopped developing other aspects of it.
Yeah.
That's exactly the thing that capitalism says isn't supposed to happen. Like capitalism says, oh, if you sell a lot, you're supposed to get more product. Whereas they sold so much GTA Online that they didn't make any other. It doesn't even make sense to say it out loud. It's shit like that where I wouldn't be so frustrated with capitalism if it didn't contradict itself constantly for seemingly no reason, but in the context of what's obviously always chasing more and more profit at someone's expense. The idea that I, as somebody who bought GTA 5, didn't get any more downloadable content because so many people kept giving them money for GTA Online that they just didn't need to expand the game. It's painful. There's like part of my soul that hurts that I participated in this thing and then other people just blindly kept throwing money at them for whatever reason, and now that they actually impacted my capacity to enjoy that. Like, I don't know, I haven't played GTA 5 in years because I don't really do online games, so online was never going to catch my attention. But because there's no DLC, it was like once you're finished with it, if you're not going to play online, it's done.
Yeah.
The fact that I spent whatever I spent on it when I bought it, and then don't get any expansion because other people are still playing GTA Online to this day, which I don't know what they're fucking getting out of it. But it's like, it feels like if you started playing GTA Online when it first came out and are still playing GTA Online, that person must just live in that game. I don't, I can't fathom as a gamer what that would be like because I've never played an online game for that long and had the online game still be as popular, I guess, that much later. But it's it's fascinating to me that there are still people that are playing GTA Online, knowing damn well that that's why we didn't get any DLC and they're still continuing to play. Like, I guess I'm upset and I stopped playing. If I had continued playing, I'd be twice as upset because my own behavior got me or prevented me from getting more new content. And that's where I'm like, there must be some different enjoyment of escapism that people are getting where it doesn't even matter what they're escaping. They just like pick something and stick with it. And it's like GTA Online became a bunch of people's escapism and they just stuck with it to this day. And I can't even fathom that.
I know that there's still a racing community that's dedicated to staying at the top of the leaderboards. I know that still exists, and I'm pretty sure that those people aren't playing the game anymore. They're just going in to go for racing purposes.
But there's racing games if you want to do that.
Yeah, I know there's vastly superior racing games out there.
Yeah, because that's where, on that note, when I was searching for an open world motorcycle game, GTA is one that kept coming up. And I'm like, okay, I've played GTA 5, and while that mechanic is not bad, that's not what I'm looking for. And then I found The Crew and The Crew 2. The Crew Motorfest sucks ass. Anybody who's thinking about getting it, it sucks. Um, but I did a bunch of research and found this game where I could ride around on a motorcycle open world, and because it was like slightly older, um, it wasn't that expensive. So GTA 5 can do that, but there's other, like I said, there's other games that do all the other stuff better. Like if you want to fly a plane, fucking Ace Combat or Microsoft Flight Simulator. If you want to drive, fucking a multitude of other driving games. If you want to fucking bowl, there's bowling games. Like the fact that you can do it all in one place, I get the appeal of it. But because I've done all of those things, knowing that their ever presence makes them all just slightly inferior to something that's dedicated to that thing. That's why I don't go to that when I'm trying to race or if I'm trying to play a bowling game or if I'm trying to play a golf game. Because while you can do those in GTA, you can have more fun with more accuracy in other games that aren't even necessarily super expensive, which is the benefit of being in this age of like pre-made assets making gaming so accessible that we no longer have to buy poorly made AAA games, like AAA games that play like they're not AAA games. And I think the game studios are just now realizing that after burning through so much money and pushing out so much garbage, where 2024 has been a legitimately good game or year for games. It's just one good game after another comes out, and it's almost even hard to like remember every fucking good game that's come out this year because a new good game keeps coming out.
Yeah, I saw this series of promotions for a game called Forever Winter, which isn't out yet, and it's the first time I've been really excited about a survival game in a long time. I have no idea like how much like how close it is to actually being ready for prime time. But right now, what kind of alpha they're doing, the game looks amazing, and it's because these developers have been doing AAA game development for years, and they're really taking advantage of what has become the base level for GPUs for gaming. Almost everything has ray tracing now, and so the games can actually do that. They're actually building in stuff for it that's like taking advantage of it. It's not just, yeah, let's make like last year's ideas look really good. Let's take a dying game development environment and just make another game in it just because. It's not that crap anymore. They're really pushing what the GPUs can do. And it's exciting because what's the point of having all this really cool hardware if the only stuff that really takes advantage of it is a development environment? I mean, don't get me wrong, like dev environments are cool because you can try out all sorts of software that doesn't really exist. But that's like only half entertaining. I don't want to debug shit just to have fun. I don't think debugging is fun though. Some people do, I think. And more power to them because we need people who like doing that stuff.
Well, and it's like it has its place where I think debugging is fun, but if I'm trying to play a game and I have to debug before I play my game, then it's not fun.
Yeah, that's
And
what I
that's
mean.
where a lot of games put you in that scenario because they're not putting them out optimized for various reasons, but individuals will have to do a lot of debugging, whether it's with the settings or with the actual code, before the game is in a acceptable playable state. And I think enough people are over dealing with that, where now the game studios are, I think they're afraid of putting things out
Yeah.
and having that necessity because of the backlash of like, now you have enough people know what an unoptimized game looks like, and poor performance, that you have to optimize your shit when you put it out, or else they're gonna rip you in the reviews.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Although I still play games like every so often that are just they just remind me that sometimes we get unfinished products, that sometimes budgets run out, and that's like the nature of this stuff. Especially if they're going to release something that they haven't completely committed to. I think that's why old Nintendo games were so interesting, is because they had to be ready to go. Like even the Sega games that we could beat in 5 hours, that stuff was all pretty well worked out. Either you liked it or you didn't. It was still a solid game. We
Being able to push day one updates allowed companies to push out unfinished games,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
I mean, what did Legend of Zelda need more? Did Final Fantasy what 5 need more? I mean, obviously they made like a bajillion Final Fantasy games, but they always did some kind of what seemed like a meteoric improvement over their predecessors.
So you're nailing upon something that I've been thinking about just in general, I feel like franchises were a civilization mistake. Um, and that means franchises in the food like area, franchises in film, franchises in video games, franchises in comic books. And one of the reasons I've been thinking about this is because does it makes it really difficult to know when to stop extracting from a property. And it's like you're saying, at the end of the first Legend of Zelda game, they could have stopped there and it would have just been a classic for that people would still be playing today.
Yeah. Instead
But
of
no,
the umpteen bajillion sequels.
right, which are not all good, and not all of them are classic, and they've made multiple classics along the way.
There are 29 Zelda games.
Yeah. Whereas, like, I think people don't realize that there are that many because they made enough classics that you give them a pass for making the like mediocre versions. Where it's like Zelda 3, that shit was like revolutionary when it came out. And just the original was revolutionary because they had the fucking gold fucking cartridge. So something like that, where if you do one thing that sets it apart, it can change the industry forever. But then I think they got stuck in that mode of like the thing in Matrix 4 where it's like, oh, you got to revolutionize gaming again. And they try to revolutionize gaming fucking 29 times and it doesn't work every time. Sometimes it does. But especially when you're working within the same generation of game system, it's going to be really hard to revolutionize that
yeah, because every time if it's all within the same machine, like if you get like a whole bunch of revolutionary updates to a franchise within like PlayStation 1, then by the end of the day it's like, wait, were these guys holding out on us this whole time? And of course they were.
Well, I don't even know if it's holding out so much as learning.
Well, that too, platform. But at the same time, we feel like we've been, this whole time they should have been giving us this level, and I think that's what bleeds into the expectation.
Right, for sure. But I think that, I think that's a logical fallacy that happens with exposure to quality over time, because that's where like this gets back to the notion of what I was talking about with the kids now, where they see so much good CGI that if you try to go back and show them quote unquote classic movies that have bad CGI, they won't even be able to sit through it because it's the average fucking commercial has better CGI than those films.
Yeah.
So like that's the exact type of the video games now, the assets they're working with, like so many basic games have 3D assets that you try to get a kid to go back and play Legend of Zelda 2D with terrible assets where you can barely make out Link.
Yeah.
I don't blame them for not wanting to play that shit. Like they don't have any nostalgia associated with that. So they shouldn't, as a kid growing up with a cell phone that was 5 to 10 times as powerful as any gaming system we grew up with, probably way more than that.
Yeah.
I'm just being conservative without looking it up. Like these kids are playing with fucking iPads and cell phones that make our child and teenage gaming systems look like Fisher Price toys. So I don't blame them for any of it. The issue becomes then they also get better constructed game development in the form of focus groups. So it is specially designed to make it more addictive and to make it more fun in ways that we had no exposure to. So then people don't understand why kids are so addicted to Pokemon Go or whatever. And it's like, yeah, because they literally have fucking labs designed to figure out how to make this game the most addictive they can possible.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, it's orders of magnitude more powerful. Gaming PCs are like, it's it's not even really fair to compare any console to a gaming PC, because gaming PCs are the development environments for console games. It's like, not only can we build the game and play it, we can debug it in real time as we're playing it. I'm not sure if...
And stream all of it.
And stream it all in real time on the same computer.
On the same computer. Yeah.
Like, there's a level of just like, really, come on, guys, just work with us for a second. Like, kind of where no matter how good the gaming environment is, like, we can emulate it in real time functionality. Of course, they're holding out on us. We're just not using the right machines. Actually, when I look...
Well, and on a note... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
There's this guy, he's a game developer. His name is Loveseat Shawty, LUVSEATSHAWTY. He is building a boxing game all by himself, but he'll like upload live streaming of him working on code, and I'll watch him ever so often, because it's interesting.
Street boxing.
Yeah, and I've been like following him developing it for like months now. I found it searching for a boxing game, and then found him, and I was like, is this a scam at first? Because like the way he was like present, I'm like, surely this dude isn't building all this by himself. And the way it seems like it's like malware, and he's like just using it as a scam. But no, he really is. He's like he uploads videos, and seeing him learn was like enlightening to me, because I saw what it takes for somebody to do this by themselves and the drive, but also that there are actually still people doing it in ways that, in watching him and seeing him persist with how he's putting the development sessions online and like having his Discord where he's interacting with people, it gives me hope that AI can't do this.
Yeah.
There's things that are part of the human experience with developing a game that AI simply is not equipped to do. It doesn't care about doing, and those are the things that are going to make his game appeal to the people that eventually it finds as an audience, because he's putting all of this time and effort and love into it, and you can see it. And so that's something you can't really fake with.
Yeah, well, AI isn't going to be able to make a decision that it's going to do something for a reason, whereas he can make decisions. He can be intentional with his coding. He can identify problems and create solutions for them. AI is just going to polish things, and maybe not even polish it into the state that we want. I think there are enough examples of AI giving us a bunch of crap that we're definitely on the way out, I think, because the sheer processing power required and the electricity required, and the fact that these things are still giving out just horrible advice. Claude, talking specifically about Claude, because that's the most wackadoodle AI that's been unleashed on everyone. Plus, it all just feels like a solution to a problem that doesn't exist.
Exceptional Radio. Exceptional Randos shows produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.